success. We got to start with one of your other, I guess, maybe, previous daughters, top athletes from Iowa. Of course, I'm talking about Caitlin Clark. Wow is all I can say. I mean, I can't imagine what the last 12 months have been like for her, but it seems like she handles every single piece of adversity thrown her way with poise and class. So in your opinion, how do you feel like she's handled it all, and have you had a chance to speak with her much?
Oh, I get to speak with her, absolutely.
Two challenges, that's what Lisa Bluder just revealed about coaching the most famous player in women's basketball history. And when you break down what she actually said, these weren't logistical problems or X's and O's issues. These were fundamental human challenges that threatened to derail Caitlin Clark's entire development as a leader and a teammate. The first one? COVID isolation that prevented her from building any real relationships with her team. The second, a media circus so overwhelming that Bluder herself admits she's amazed Clark didn't completely lose herself in it. So let's understand what actually happened during those Iowa years, because the challenges Bluder faced explain everything about who Caitlin Clark became as a professional.
No, I think she's handled this unbelievably. You forget sometimes, this is a 22-year-old, right? She's been named Time Female or Athlete of the Year, and has had all kinds of things coming at her from all different types of directions. And, with that publicity becomes some haters always, and that's unfortunate. But we really work hard at Iowa on putting the blinders on and just being able to be very tunnel visioned, and I think it's helping her right now.
Listen to how Bluder describes the communication strategy they developed. Texting during games about how the flow is going. That's not normal. Coach-player interaction after someone graduates and goes pro. That's a relationship built on genuine trust and mutual respect. And notice what Bluder emphasizes. Clark was 22 years old when she was named Time's Female Athlete of the Year. 22. Most people that age are figuring out their first real job, maybe dealing with some Instagram drama. Clark was managing international fame, corporate partnerships worth millions, and criticism from people who should have been celebrating her success. The tunnel vision approach Bluder mentions, that wasn't just a cute coaching philosophy. That was survival strategy, because when you're breaking attendance records at every arena, when ESPN is broadcasting your games in prime time, when opposing fans are buying tickets just to boo you, the noise becomes deafening. Bluder's job was to help Clark put on binders and focus solely on basketball, and based on what we saw, it worked.
If you're surprised, especially when you consider her impact not only on the WNBA, but sports as a whole. So I feel like some still don't see it that way. Like you mentioned, there's always going to be haters. But when you hear things like what Washington Mystics co-owner Sheila Johnson said, criticizing the choice of Caitlin for that award, I mean, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, it's silly to me that anybody's trying to take away from something that's so good.
Now, here's where Bluder gets real about the criticism Clark faced, specifically calling out Sheila Johnson's comments about the Time Magazine award. Johnson, who co-owns the Washington Mystics, publicly questioned whether Clark deserved that recognition. And Bluder's response reveals something crucial about how people inside women's basketball should be thinking about Clark's impact. She compares Clark to Billie Jean King. That's not hyperbole. That's a Hall of Fame coach who's seen decades of women's sports, making a direct comparison to the most important figure in the history of women's athletics. Bluder's point is simple, but powerful. When Caitlin's light shines on her, it shines on all of us. That's what Iowa's team understood. That's what the WNBA should understand. But instead, we got co-owners of WNBA teams actively trying to diminish her accomplishments. Think about how counterproductive that is. You have someone bringing unprecedented attention and revenue to your sport, and instead of embracing it, you're nitpicking whether she deserves recognition. Bluder calls it silly, but I'd call it something stronger than that.
Hitting stratospheric levels when you talk about her fame. So how did you personally help keep her kind of calm and focused and on the main goal of really helping the team make it to the NCAA tournament?
She's really goal-driven, and so if she thinks something's going to help her achieve the success, that team success, she's all on board. It was really easy keeping her focused on the prize. And I think her family, her parents are really good. They kept her grounded. So it really wasn't that hard of a challenge for us.
Goal-driven. That's the term Bluder uses. and it explains everything about how Clark approached her college career. She wasn't playing for individual stats or personal glory. She was obsessed with team success, with getting back to the Final Four, with winning a national championship. And that goal orientation made Bluder's job easier, in one sense. If Clark believed something would help the team win, she was all in. No ego, no resistance, no prima donna behavior. But here's what makes Bluder's coaching during this period so impressive. She had to balance Clark's individual brilliance with team dynamics. She had to manage the fact that everyone knew Clark was the best player on the floor while still maintaining a cohesive team structure. She had to deal with opposing coaches specifically game planning to stop one player, which meant Clark was getting physically beaten up every single game, and she had to do all of this while the entire sports world was watching, analyzing, and criticizing every decision. The family support Bluder mentions is critical too. Clark's parents kept her grounded, kept her focused on what mattered. That's not a given with young athletes who achieve sudden fame. We've seen countless examples of talented players who couldn't handle the pressure, who let success go to their heads, who lost themselves in the attention. Clark had the opposite problem. She had to learn how to accept the attention and use it positively rather than trying to hide from it.
I act like I'm 10, so I don't know. I feel like I'm just a kid that plays basketball and has a lot of fun, and for me, like, coming into these arenas and these environments, like, I look around and it's incredible. Like, it really is. Like, I don't show up and expect, like, these crowds. Like, sure, like, maybe you've gotten a little bit used to it, but for me, like, that's not anything that ever gets old. It really is something that's really cool, like, especially as a young girl who grew up going to games. And, you know, as a young girl, if I would have came to a game in a building like this and seen this type of crowd, I think I would have been kind of in heaven. So for myself, I think it makes me really happy. It makes me smile. It gives me a lot of joy to just see the impact that I've been able to have, my teammates have been able to have, women's basketball players all across the country have been able to have, and I hope it continues to grow, because I feel like this league is really just, you know, scratching the surface. There's so much that can continue to improve and continue to get better, and I hope I'm a part of that going forward, and, you know, just being an advocate for every single person in this league, and, you know, keep pushing this thing forward and enjoying it all at the same time and having a lot of...
Watch Clark's face when she talks about the crowds and the impact. That's genuine wonder. That's someone who still can't quite believe what's happening around her. She specifically mentions being a young girl who went to games and how she would have been in heaven seeing crowds like the ones that now show up to watch her play. That perspective, that ability to remember what it felt like to be a fan, that's what keeps her connected to why this matters. But notice the shift in her tone when she talks about the league's potential. She says women's basketball is scratching the surface, that there's so much room for improvement and growth. That's not someone satisfied with the current state of things. That's someone who understands that the attention she's brought is just the beginning, that the infrastructure and support need to catch up to the interest level. And here's what's fascinating about her approach. She wants to be an advocate for every single person in the league. Not just the stars, not just her teammates, but everyone. That's the leadership quality Bluder was talking about. The one that took time to develop because Clark initially did everything on her own. She learned that her success could lift others, that her platform could amplify voices that weren't being heard, that her visibility could create opportunities for players who weren't getting the same attention.
A name we have not heard in a mighty long time has brought back new headlines. That is former Iowa Hawkeyes head coach Lisa Bluder. She just did an incredible article, and she spoke about Caitlin Clark, the current state of the WNBA. And I ain't finna waste no time with this one, bro. We finna jump right into it. Let's head on over to Google. It's being reported that Lisa Bluder reveals two biggest challenges of coaching Caitlin Clark, former Iowa Hawkeyes head coach Lisa Bluder.
Let's go back to the beginning of Bluder's comments, because the COVID challenge is more significant than it might initially seem. Think about what happened. Clark arrived at Iowa in 2020, right as the pandemic shut everything down. Her entire freshman season was played in empty arenas. No crowd energy, no home court advantage, no normal college experience. But more importantly, no natural opportunities to build relationships with teammates. Basketball team chemistry usually develops through shared experiences off the court. Team dinners, bus rides, hanging out in dorm rooms, going to campus events together. All of that disappeared during COVID. So Clark, who was already the most talented player on the team, was isolated from her teammates in ways that made it nearly impossible to develop the trust and camaraderie that championship teams require. Bluder says it was hard to get Clark to become a good leader, that it took time because she was used to doing everything on her own. That's the COVID effect. When you can't build relationships naturally, when every interaction is socially distanced and masked and mediated through screens, you default individual effort. You rely on yourself because there's no other option. And for someone as talented as Clark, that meant dominating games individually rather than learning how to make her teammates better. The fact that Clark eventually learned to lead effectively, that she figured out how to elevate her teammates while still being the best player on the floor. That's a testament to both her adaptability and Bluder's coaching. But it wasn't automatic, and it wasn't easy.
There was so much noise, all the people that wanted a piece of her. I'm amazed at how she handled it. She didn't get a big head. She was still a goofy kid. Instead of becoming a prima donna, she added. So Lisa Bluder broke her silence about Caitlin Clark coaching her. Now, there is a flashback moment to this because Lisa Bluder did an interview with USA Today. That's what we're finna play right now. Roll the footage.
Your daughter and your son.
The second challenge Bluder identifies is the noise, the overwhelming attention that surrounded Clark's junior and senior seasons. And here's what makes this particularly difficult. The noise wasn't just media coverage or fan attention. It was everyone wanting a piece of her. Corporate sponsors, charitable organizations, media outlets, fans wanting autographs and selfies, opposing fans wanting to heckle her, analysts wanting to debate her legacy. Every single person who came into contact with Clark wanted something from her. Bluder says she's amazed at how Clark handled it without getting a big head, without becoming a prima donna. But think about the alternative. Think about how many athletes in similar positions have absolutely crumbled under that kind of pressure. The ones who started believing their own hype, who stopped working hard, who treated teammates and coaches poorly because they thought they were above the team. Clark did the opposite. She stayed goofy, stayed humble, stayed focused on team success. And that required constant reinforcement from Bluder, constant reminders about what actually mattered, constant effort to eliminate distractions and keep Clark's eyes on the prize. That's exhausting for a coach. That's a daily battle against forces trying to pull your best player in 1,000 different cool.
It's wild to remember that less than 2 years ago, Caitlin Clark was still playing college basketball and at the University of Iowa. Given all that Caitlin Clark has already experienced and accomplished in the WNBA since her time, her iconic college run feels like years ago. Guys, if you remember, that was a time to be a...
Here's what makes Bluder's perspective so valuable right now. She's removed from the day-to-day intensity of coaching. She retired after Clark's senior season in 2024, handed the program over to her longtime assistant Jan Jensen, and stepped back from the spotlight. She's not trying to recruit players, not trying to protect her job, not trying to manage current team dynamics. She can be honest about what the Clark years were actually like. And her honesty reveals something important about the current WNBA situation. The challenges Clark faced at Iowa, the isolation and the overwhelming attention, those didn't disappear when she went pro. If anything, they intensified. The WNBA spotlight is even brighter, the expectations even higher, the criticism even more intense. But now Clark doesn't have Bluder running interference, doesn't have that established support system that Iowa built around her, doesn't have the benefit of a coach who spent 4 years learning exactly how to help her navigate these challenges. Clark has to figure out the professional version of these challenges on her own, with a new coaching staff, new teammates, new organizational structure. And based on what we saw during her rookie season, some of those challenges remain unresolved. The physical play she faced, the criticism from other players and coaches, the ongoing debate about her impact on the league, all of that echoes the difficulties Bluder describes from the Iowa years. The difference is that Bluder was actively working to shield Clark from the noise, to help her maintain focus, to prevent the attention from becoming destructive. The question is whether Clark's WNBA team is providing that same level of support, or whether she's having to manage it all herself, while also trying to win games at the highest level of professional basketball. Bluder's comments about the tunnel vision approach, about eliminating outside distractions, about keeping Clark focused on team goals rather than individual achievement, those are lessons that apply directly to Clark's professional career. The challenge is implementing them in an environment where the stakes are higher, the competition is better, and the margin for error is smaller. What Bluder revealed in this interview isn't just interesting historical context about Clark's college year. It's a roadmap for understanding what Clark needs to succeed professionally, what kind of support system allows a player of her caliber to thrive despite overwhelming attention and pressure. The two challenges Bluder identified, isolation and noise, those are permanent features of Clark's basketball life now. The question is whether the people around her understand that, whether they're equipped to help her navigate those challenges, or whether she's going to have to figure it out through trial and error, while the entire sports world watches and judges every decision she makes. Because here's the reality, Caitlin Clark is still only in her early 20s. She's still developing as a player and as a person. She's still learning how to balance individual excellence with team success, how to handle criticism from people who should be supporting her, how to use her platform responsibly while also protecting her own mental health and well-being. Those are the challenges Bluder helped her navigate at Iowa. Those are the challenges that will define her professional career. And based on what Bluder just revealed, they're challenges that require intentional support, strategic planning, and constant reinforcement of what actually matters. Lisa Bluder gave us a window into what it actually takes to coach greatness, to manage a player who transcends the sport while still keeping her grounded in team basketball. The question now is whether the WNBA is learning those lessons, whether teams understand what players like Clark need to succeed, or whether we're going to keep seeing the same patterns of isolation and overwhelming noise that Bluder worked so hard to overcome during those Iowa years. What do you think? Drop your perspective in the comments, and if you want more honest analysis of what's really happening in women's basketball, hit that subscribe button.